Hi, I'm Chris Wardlaw for CarGurus, and this is the 2016 Nissan Murano in Platinum trim. Nissan redesigned the Murano last year, and it remains a 5-passenger crossover SUV with front or all-wheel drive and an impressive 3.5-liter V6 engine. Styled and equipped to straddle the line between mainstream and luxury brands, this Platinum version of the Murano aims to deliver an upscale look and feel and plenty of sophistication on a budget. Now, how does it drive? Well, kind of like an overweight Altima suffering vertigo. Hop in and I'll explain. Before we get into my review of the latest Murano, let me share a story with you. My wife and I own one. Not this version, we've got one of the originals. Ours is 10 years old, it's been almost completely trouble-free, and we love it. But we're not in love with this new one. Now, when that first Murano came out, crossovers were still a relative rarity. The design was pretty radical for the time, but it was also cohesive in a way that this new one just isn't. Additionally, what sold my wife and I on that original first generation Murano was its undeniable athleticism compared to its competition. We also loved its winning blend of comfort, utility, and love it or hate it design inside and out. Now, compared to how we felt about our Murano when it was new, my wife says this new design is busy. It's got too many superfluous lines on it. And the interior isn't as thoughtfully executed in terms of its surprise and delight features. Now, generally, I agree with her assessment. On the exterior, the only thing that I really dislike is how the headlights sweep up between the hood and the fenders. And to me, it looks a little bit, makes the Murano look a little bit like Ursula the Sea Witch from the Little Mermaid movies. Inside, I completely agree with my wife that this new Murano isn't quite as innovative as our own 10-year-old car. It's got a more conservative design, it's got a more conservative approach. The overall appearance and the control layout is very contemporary and modern, and I gotta say, the materials, for the most part, are really well done, especially in this Platinum trim level. But still, it doesn't feel as wide open and as airy inside as our own car, even with this huge panoramic sunroof. The other issue is that the Murano simply has more competition today than it did back then. I mean, the latest Ford Edge is pretty good, especially in sport trim, and I'm a huge fan of the redesigned 2016 Kia Sorento. I also like the Subaru Outback, though I definitely can recognize that it leans a lot more toward the utility end of the spectrum than the stylish end of the crossover SUV spectrum. All right, so my comparison to an overweight, unbalanced Altima really isn't fair. The truth is that in most cases where an automaker puts a crossover SUV on a car platform, yeah, the crossover SUV is gonna be heavier and it's gonna handle sloppier than the equivalent sedan. But still, I've driven other crossovers in the Murano's midsize segment that feel more athletic on my regular test loop. And while this latest version is a more capable vehicle compared to my own Murano at home, it really ought to be, given that a decade of engineering advancement has taken place since. Now, on city and suburban streets, the Murano is a real pleasure to drive. The 3.5-liter V6 makes 260 horsepower, it revs willingly, and it sounds terrific doing so. The engine's matched to a continuously variable transmission, and that powers the front wheels unless you get the optional all-wheel drive system. Now, the CVT is upgraded in this version of the Murano, and Nissan has pre-programmed gear ratios into it to make it feel and sound more like a regular automatic, which is really nice. However, this CVT does something that I've never experienced before. It actually hunts between those ratios when you're climbing mountain grades. That's not something Nissan should have mimicked from a regular automatic transmission. Now, I don't have any complaints about the Murano's brakes, which are responsive and they feature a pedal that's really easy to modulate. And I like the steering well enough too, though I would describe it more as heavy and leaden before I would characterize it as light and crisp. I think Nissan has tuned it to kind of go for a more performance-oriented feel, but especially at low speeds, effort levels probably are a little too high. Suspension tuning's nicely done, and the Murano delivers a good feel for the road, and the ride remains compliant. These are all things that Murano buyers really want in a crossover SUV. Now, the one thing that I'm not that crazy about is the way that the Murano behaves when you get it out onto a twisty country road. Look, I know that most people who buy these vehicles are not out exercising them on a regular basis. But what happens when you start to take corners with speed in the Murano is that understeer quickly becomes an issue on tighter turns. The tires supply a modest amount of grip, the body rolls, and if the pavement is undulating, kind of like that dip we just went through, the body can wallow. So you get a lot of kind of rocking and roll, and it's not very confidence inspiring. It's pretty clear that this is a front drive oriented platform with a lot of weight on the nose. All right, let's switch gears now and we'll talk about the interior. Nissan says that the Murano is the most social car it has ever designed and refers to it as a conversation space. Look, you and I both know that that's just marketing gobbledygook. Any car with more than just one driver aboard is a social conversation space. Now, what Nissan's done here is to try to open the cabin up with this wide center console and to offer rear seat occupants air vents, a USB port, a smartphone tray, and even the ability to control the infotainment system. So, if you've got kids, you know that that's not necessarily a desirable characteristic in a vehicle. As far as the infotainment system goes, the Murano setup provides modern graphics, a responsive touchscreen, and lots of knobs and buttons which help to minimize your actual interaction with the screen. A row of main function buttons right along the bottom of the screen provides easy access to main menus. And I love the fact that there's a volume knob and a tuning knob. It makes life so much easier. One of my favorite things about the new Murano is that the driver's seat is exceptionally comfortable. It uses the same zero gravity seat construction method that Nissan employs for the Altima and some of its other models. And it's a design that's rooted in NASA space research. And it definitely works to make the Murano a great place to spend time. Plus, my Platinum test vehicles got heated and ventilated front seats. What it doesn't have, though, is a front passenger seat height adjuster. And if you're familiar with my previous video reviews, you know that that can be a deal breaker at my house. Now, the good thing is that that passenger seat sits up high enough off the floor that this really is a non-issue. Rear passengers enjoy reasonable leg and foot space, and while the back seat cushion is mounted a little bit low to make for a flat cargo area when you fold the seat, it does still provide decent thigh support. Now, cargo room in this vehicle is unexpectedly tight. It measures just 32.1 cubic feet behind the rear seat, and that's significantly less than the smaller Nissan Rogue. Maximum capacity can't match the Rogue either. It comes in at only 67 cubic feet when you fold the rear seats down. Now, as is the case with any midsize crossover SUV, safety is an important issue to discuss. And you'll be glad to know that the Murano earns a top Safety Pick Plus rating from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Now, the federal government hasn't rated the 2016 version of the Murano. They crash tested it last year and it got a 3-star rating for front passenger protection in a frontal impact collision. But the feds didn't carry that rating over for 2016, at least they haven't yet, and it's already April. So my guess is that after the test was done, Nissan must have made some kind of a change that would alter the rating, but that the NHTSA just hasn't gotten around to retesting the vehicle. Now, as far as driver assistance and crash avoidance technologies are concerned, you can option the Murano with a long list of all the modern technologies that are available. Now, the one that's the most notable is something called predictive forward collision warning, which is adopted from Infiniti models, and what it does is it doesn't just look at the vehicle directly ahead of you, but it looks 2 cars ahead in order to try to predict if a threat exists so that it can start to brake the Murano sooner than other systems that might just be looking only at the car in front of you. With this latest Murano, Nissan attempts to return the crossover SUV to its roots as a style and driving dynamics trendsetter. Now, while it's true that the Murano's better than ever, it nevertheless falls flat in several ways. The styling's overdone, the interior isn't particularly innovative, and Nissan meets technological expectations rather than exceeds them. Now, we Murano owners love our SUVs, but there are many alternatives in today's crossover marketplace, and this latest version, as good as it is, needed to be better. Be sure to check out my full review of the Murano on CarGurus.com, and if you found this review helpful, please share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For all of us at CarGurus, thank you for watching. Slows down, then it kicks down, then it speeds up, then it kicks down or up, I can't remember. You could probably cut that whole section out. Alrighty.